How do you learn who you really are? It's not found in books, it's found on the battlefield.
Ask me the question again.
All right, what's up, brother? All right,
Oh,
we're just gonna start in the middle of this because I know that you and I talking just goes awesome. So I started off with a very basic question for you, like, "Hey, how are things going?" And I could see the way you talk. I'm like, "Oh, you're about to drop some wisdom." All right, we better just start
maybe.
recording immediately.
We'll see if it's wisdom. I mean, it may land for some, may not for others. I where I'm at now, as you know, I'm on this journey of, told you I want to surrender. I want to live fully in accordance with whatever the divine self that you might, not you, but any others might think. I call it God. I call it spirit. I call it creator. A lot of different fun names. But I think that at the core of where I'm at in my world today, brother, is just kind of sitting in awe at how God is showing up in my communities, in the front row dad's world. Um, I, as I sent to you today, and while I was at church for the first time in like 3 or 4 years, I don't even know how long it's been. Um, I have been wanting to explore reconnecting with that community, so that I'm not just so that my wife and I can have community together.
Hmm.
Um, because Front Row Dads is a beautiful community, and we have the luxury of living in the place where it was launched from, and so we are connected with the wives and such from that community. But we also are not fully committed. I mean, fully connected, because they live south, we live up north, and honestly, it's more with the dads are the what are connecting in that world. But it's a long way to get around to that. We actually visited this church this morning, and after years of trying to work through hurt, the sermon this morning was I have to even look it back up because I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was crazy. It was
Something like when you were hurt from the church or something.
what to do when the church hurts you.
Yeah.
And this was the place it was coming from, was a church that, if you had told me several years back that I would go to a mega church plant type thing, I would have been like, maybe. I don't really love that idea, but it was such a genuine experience, and I cried a lot, just with the immense, amazing depth of thoughts that were said. And it was really just very humble. The whole premise of the church was a very humble deliverance of, I'm sorry that you've been through that. And there were lots of little tidbits that we could even talk about today that were just so powerful that I was like, well, I think the content for today is going to be fed by something. I have no idea where it's going to go or what it's going to be, but it was something that I think probably many of us need to hear in our world. And it's not just the basis of something for church. So this isn't about any kind of, hey, you must need to go back to church. It's about the very premise of what it means to be human at its core. So, but I've just been the most real and vulnerable over the last couple of weeks. I think I told you that I usually show up to this group of front row dads that I have. All this stuff is connected, as you know, but for our listeners, um, and it is. I showed up with a different mindset. I didn't show up with just, I'm going to serve, but I'm going to be vulnerable and honest. And I showed up with all these powerhouse guys, and we always show up with asks. And my ask was more of what I would call a command, if you will,
The
which was,
demand.
yeah, it was more of for me, it was more like, I don't know what to do. I need help. It was more of a directive. And I don't know how to live into this next phase of my life where, uh, I have a vision for something, but everything I'm trying to do when I'm trying to be the one who gets it done just seems to just not work. And I've been connecting more deeply with this reality of that I want to help people marry their faith to their life. I want everything about I want them to have faith in themselves, that they were put here by something higher than themselves for a purpose that is for the greater good of all of us. And when I led with that, everybody was just kind of like, well, duh, Les. It was funny, well, duh. Yeah, of course. I mean, that's what you are. I just said, I've just been struggling to figure out how to make this something that works. And all of a sudden, when I kind of released, and as I'm continuing to release this, um, things are just showing up in ways that are unexpected. And I had a guy literally sit me down, and he invited me and a couple other guys to go talk about spirituality over dinner. And the whole reason is he wanted to find out what it takes to hire me. And I was like, oh, that, just blown away. And it was all because of the fact that I showed up with the vulnerability. So,
Mm-hmm.
and so, yeah, I appreciate that. That today of all days, I showed up at a church and they sang songs that were, um, just songs that I needed to hear. That God's got a good plan for me. A good plan, and it wasn't just for me, for all of us, but so yeah, there's plenty of stuff that is going on in my world that seems beautiful, and opportunities coming down the pipe that I think could be great. Whatever's next, whether it's me continuing just down the path of working to get coaching clients, or speaking, or an actual career in something else. I've talked to a guy that could land something that would be amazing if it did, and if I chose that path. It's exciting. you know
Mm-hmm.
I feel tired, feel a little burned out by
Oh,
this
sure.
stress. It's been a lot of years of trying to reconcile how to live into my truest self.
Yeah.
And my truest self, I really should be, that's a capital S. It's how to really be surrendered to this whole um, process that God has put in motion, that we play in, this playground that we play in, that can be scary and mean and fun and all the things. So there you are, man. That's where I'm at. How about you? Where are you at? How are you?
Well, I'll start with the commonalities of where I'm at right now. I actually was talking to somebody who was working with Ryan Blair, the billionaire guy or whatever. And I was talking with one of his main guys, and they sent me a video on, like, the thing that you're talking about, that surrender to the call, your calling, your purpose or whatever that is. Now I have an idea of, like, I know what my purpose is as far as like what God has put me to do. I didn't think that my purpose would be what God has put me to do, but with the higher levels that I've moved up in my ascension, the more I have realized this is where my purpose lies. Now, here's the fun game. How do you define that in a short way? How do you define it in a way that's relatable, a way that it gets to the point very quickly, and in a way that people can go, man, I need that? How do you do that? Because right now, I've been writing on this for about a week and a half now. And even last night, I was trying to write on it, my purpose, my calling. I've got it down to like a few hard sentences, but then I know that it's going to be somewhere in using the most powerful words that connect, whether it be hope or purpose or whatever it may be. But how do I use it correctly? So even in trying to do this, surrender to my next level up, like, there's a thing there. And even before we went viral and before our stuff started to blow up, I had a massive surrender breakthrough. Like, I had a, like, man, it just got fast forwarded. I went into my faith, I opened myself up, and then we went very viral. And somewhere in there, I have hit a next level ceiling that needs to be broken through. And so God's like, all right, good. No, you've built you up to this point. Now, if we're going to go to the next thing, you got to learn the next thing. And I'm like, I better get out of my own way then and get back to paying attention, which will leave me part of this church thing in a second. But let me pin that. Remember, I have to get out of my way and pay attention. Just don't let me forget that. All right. So when I'm writing down my purpose, it comes down to a few things that seem obvious. And I think this is where people will say, duh, less. Help more people marry faith to themselves. Obviously, it seems obvious, right? Except it's really difficult. It's not obvious. It's really hard to do. So I wrote down this even last night, just this is rough draft stuff. And this is in tandem with about 10 pages of writing that I pretty much circle one or two sentences out of it to make any sense. God sends people here to do difficult jobs. This is where people think that God is meant to make it so your life is easy. No, God does not ask easy things. He sends people to fight the suffering that other people live in so that we can serve him better. Like we can serve God, but people can't see God when they're in the middle of their own suffering. We operate best with perspective, and yet good is not as good without the bad. Yet we don't need to stay in the bad forever, just long enough to learn the lesson for understanding the difference. For this, he sends warriors to fight through the fears, doubts, sadness, loss, pain, abuse, abandonment, terrors, and isolation to give them hope. The key words that I'm wrestling with are hope and belonging, belief, purpose, guidance, relief, freedom, love, faith, connection. God does not ask easy things. He sends me to pull you out of the nightmares and free you from living in the suffering so that you can know him. This means I have to go into the darkest places of your life, help you fight to get out of them so you can have a damn chance to hope again. And this opens up the category of all these words: hope, belief, purpose, guidance, freedom, love, connection. All these words open up again once you're not in hell anymore. But people have been living in suffering. That's all they do. We're finding out more and more people now that I'm plugging kind of back into what's going on. I've been just working so hard. Plugging back in, I'm finding person after person who has been committing suicide, like just suicide after suicide after suicide. And I just mentioned earlier, like this week in our group, I used to take those calls, the suicide calls, because I would not have anybody else have that on them. Only I would take those calls. And so we would have a suicide call maybe once every couple of weeks. There'd be somebody who's sitting next to a gun and they're about done. And I would take those calls. We incorporated one of our guys to be able to have a nighttime call that is designed only to remove isolation. Hang out. That's it. A place with healthy guys who just want to hang out with you. You belong. You can connect. You matter. I want to hear what you have to say. Since we started this nighttime group of just hang out whenever you feel like you're all alone, I have not had any suicide calls I've had to do. We have to meet people in their shit. We have to meet them in their nightmares. We have to meet them in their suffering in order to create transformation. And so many people these days are working on the symptoms and not the roots. They're
Yes.
talking about information and not transformation. They want to give you answers without solutions and call themselves experts. And this is where I find my purpose, is to send me in to pull you out of the nightmares, free you from living in suffering so that you can have at least a chance to know that there's a God there. And this is why God does not ask us easy things. Can he just do it on his own? Yeah, but that's not our purpose, is for him to I just win. No, he's going to send people. This leads me back to megachurch. When our pastors, I'm not putting names out there, but our pastors, if I had if I had a real honest problem, if I was really struggling, my pastors would not be there for me. And they have made it quite clear that for their own mental health, they will not help people directly. Even when I say, well, I would like to serve, and there is something that I have that this church could really use, which is the cure to anxiety, the cure to doubt, the cure to depression, a how to beat these things with a support system that is absolute. I'll run a life group or do something to make it so you can have this. And they're like, you know what? I'll keep that in the back of my mind. It's amazing how these people who love to give talks and can't wait to give the next speech aren't listening anymore. And that's the part when people start saying, I'm hurt by the church. Andrea praised me because she said, it's amazing how you can have somebody who, like, it seems like they should be paying attention, and how they just reject that completely, and it does not faze me. I'm like, this is just it's the same thing as if God sends people that you wouldn't expect, but are you able to listen even though it didn't come from a source that you think it should come from? And this is the humble pie, those ego sandwiches, when people are hurt by the church because they're supposed to be the person who helps people out of hell, but you don't know what that person looks like. It's not going to be the pastor sometimes. In fact, most of the time, it's not the head pastor. I've been to multiple churches, and anytime I reached out to the head pastor, like, hey, let's have a one on one or just hang out. No, I'm not going to do that. I have to prepare for my next speech, and I don't have time to listen, even if God sent someone that I should be listening to. There's a lot of hypocrisy in that, and that makes it easy for people to go, the church is bullshit. Maybe that one is. But even Jesus didn't operate that way. He would listen to the person who was not the most fortunate. And that's why it's interesting to me to say, like, okay, how do I define this purpose, regardless of the hypocrisy of pain that has come from a church, which I cannot put my faith in these people. That is not where my faith lies. Just because somebody gave a stirring speech is not where my faith is built.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't work that way. But my call to purpose is greater than even the building that I go to serve on a camera for church, which is what I do. I operate cameras there. Only a few people there know what I actually do because I don't advertise it. Mm-hmm. And some people there come up and go, I've seen your videos. I watch your stuff. But I don't even talk about what I do there. And it's ironic that even if you did, they wouldn't listen. I think there's only 3 people who are in mental health in our entire church. We have a mega church. And I'm one of them. And you see hands go up across the room that say, I'm going through anxiety. And they only have 2 parts of the 5-part solution. And they aren't listening for the other 3. Pretty amazing.
It is. It is. Yeah, it's in so many ways. One of the things that I appreciate about today is the humility of the pastors. And who knows? I mean, I'm just getting to, like, this is my second time to go to this church. It's the first time I've been to church, and I don't even remember. I think it heavily says 3. I think it's more like 4, but who knows? It's been a while. And so much of, in fact, like you talk about hypocrisy, and the pastor says to everyone that he's the first to admit, yeah, and we're looking for one more hypocrite. because that's what we are. We're church is not God, and the pastors are also not God. It's just a bunch of imperfect people, as we know, and it's supposed to be that way. And of course, I still struggle with the whole concept of you being imperfect people, because there are variables within this whole thing that I believe dismiss the power of who we are in this creation as humans, that we were uniquely, at least according to our understanding, uniquely selected to be fellow co-creators alongside this divine, God. And part of even the message today was that there's a lot of critique that can be done in the church, but critique is all about us falling in the ideal of the past, meaning that it should have been different back then, and now I'm critiquing it today. And they led with this idea of, instead, that creativity, to be a creator of what it should be, is really what we're called to in this life, not just at church, not in church. We're called to be that as humans, to be creators, not critiquers. And it's so easy in this world to be, sucked into that idea of we have to be somehow nitpicking, be against something all the time. Our world is definitely in this idea of, I don't like your information. I mean, that's really what it is. It's all just an exchange of information. And there's a lack of humility a lot of times in our communities. I won't even just say church, but the lack of creativity comes in the fact that we get stuck in this idea that we should all think the same. And I really appreciated that. What was one of the things that was said this morning that just made me go, man, I mean, I literally went, did I just find a church home? I mean, literally, that's what I was thinking to myself today. And I'm even hesitant to say that, and I don't want to say that. It's just crazy how that's popping up in my head. But I can't help but when the guy literally says to us, you don't have to believe what we believe to be here. There's a little bit of a jaw-dropping aspect that I've only heard in a couple of other really kind of profoundly out there movements, like the Unity Church movement, who really they're like, come one, come all. We don't even care if you believe in God. we believe in love. We believe in Christ consciousness. We believe that there's something there. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty powerful. But to sit in a church building and whether it, and I do not want to prop this thing up because I don't know enough yet. And I don't know if, and I'm not even going to, I don't want to prop it up even if I don't, even if I'm there for the next 20 years or find a church where I'm going to be. I don't want that to ever be the thing that I have raised up in my life again to replace the one thing that I know to be true, and that there's something so much bigger than I am, so much bigger than we are, that we're all operating in. And so I even go so far as to push back, not push back. It's not the right word, Rick, but I'll use the word pushback because I don't know what else to say, but to challenge the notion that God is doing something externally of us. And what I really want to say is God uses matter, and he always has, which means that I matter because he created me. And so that piece of it, where if God is using matter, I mean, dude, this is absolutely the most mind-boggling. I did not know this. And I love it when I go to church and I learn something and I actually can say, I really did not know this and have a clue. Promised Land was a 12-day walk. Did you know this? The Promised Land was a 12-day walk from where they were slaves in Egypt. Okay. And it took them 40 years in the desert. Like, it takes as long as it needs to take. It's like, that's actually a very simple walk if you think about it. From the perspective of 40 years to 12 days, that's a very simple walk.
Mm-hmm.
But the journey was hard. And so, like, when we're talking about it, it's not easy. It's not easy, but it really is simple when we can start to truly trust in the idea that God is working at all times and we can surrender to it and we can move in it. And I'm just tired of resisting all the things that I have resisted for so long because of a few days of that where I felt hurt by people in the church, or forgotten or left behind or abandoned, whatever you want to say. I don't want to live in that world anymore. I want to remember the many days of community that and the good things that raised me to actually have the thoughts and the beliefs that I'm playing with in my life this day and age.
Yeah.
And in fact, you and I can sit here and have these conversations around this. Is like, would I be able to sit here with you, Rick, if I had decided, to not surrender, if I had decided to not be on that path, I resisted it and just said, no, I'm not gonna forgive this whole process. I'm gonna think I am bigger than everyone else, and that what I need is more important. And I just can't help but think that if I hadn't done that, if I'd just been in hurt and pain and stayed there and not been open to a new way of opening up my life to surrender, who would have thought I would be sitting here today having this conversation? And it is freaking profound. I think I said this either before, but I didn't say it. But to show up on the day to church when they're literally preaching a sermon on what to do when the church hurts you. Like, I show up, there's been almost 1,000 days and I show up on the day where they're preaching this sermon, and it's a series, but it's not a long series. Mm-hmm. So come on, folks, like, synchronicities are not just a real thing, not some new cliche word. It's that this whole thing has been set in motion and God is using matter all the time. The question is, can you open your eyes to it and begin to see, witness it and bear witness to this idea? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's the part that people are missing, is being able to see it. You always stack such good points. I'm gonna jump back. I write on this, and I think this is actually at the core of a part of the reason the Warrior's Way is so effective, is I truly believe this idea where you said you didn't want to use the word pushback, but you wanted to challenge. And I have a philosophy that everything needs to be challenged. Everything. Sure. I do. You do. We all do. Everything needs to be challenged. And the fact that people don't challenge these days is where the missing pieces are. There's a Bernard Hayes quote that I really also enjoy too. Advances are made by answering questions. Discoveries are made by questioning answers. And that's where I stay often. And this is the reason why I think I've had a lot of the success that I've had in what I've been doing, especially in the creating aspect, is because I will challenge things to the very one word that it is.
Yeah.
I'll take it down to answer this question, and then I'll challenge that answer. And then I'll take that answer and I'll challenge that answer. And then I'll take that answer and I'll challenge that answer. Is this authentic? Is it true? Is it real? Is it another smoke screen, or is this really what's going on in here? All the way down to the point where I go, damn, that's rough. Like, that's
Yeah.
what's at the bottom of this thing. This whole thing is built on this. And if you have the courage to do that, you're able to really find yourself. This lowers my stress level substantially because people cannot hurt me with something that is untrue because I have had the courage to challenge it.
Yeah. Yeah.
This also comes with there's a thing that Andrea hated that I would say, but I said your results show your results. And like, what do you mean by that? Well, the results of every choice that you've ever made has given you the results that you have right now. And it sounds very simple, right? Well, each choice has led to another thing. This is a causality conversation, which we won't get into because that's a whole conversation. But every choice leads down a path that leads to another choice, down a path that leads down another choice. And any one choice can spiral a completely different thing. Like, what if you didn't go on your first date with your wife? What if you're like,
Yeah.
I'm busy and don't go out with her? And then you guys don't have a thing. Like, your whole life would be totally different from that one decision. You'd be
Yes.
totally different path, You probably wouldn't even be close to the same guy you are right now. Be a
Yeah.
totally different human from that one decision. And how many of those happened? So the challenge on everything is where we have to start looking deep into our own stuff and kind of the reality is kind of getting sick of our own bullshit. At some
Yeah.
point, our ego is not our amigo. At some point, I'm tired.
Yes. I think that is probably I have a wonderful brother-in-law, and I think he talks about it all the time, and I've adopted it. And it may have started with who knows where it started, but it doesn't really matter. And I think that's part of this whole notion. We're all full of bullshit. At the moment that I say something and believe something, like it is such a foolish notion, and this is not okay. It's a critique, but I don't mean it in a I don't mean it in a we as humans do this. It's like we make so many of us raise our kids to believe something, and then when they push back, we shut them down.
Mhm.
We join a community and they have certain belief systems, and we say something, and then there's maybe pushback. And when I say pushback, I mean it's unwelcome type pushback. It's like we don't talk.
Unsolicited
Yeah,
advice.
we don't. Yeah, we don't think that way, or we don't. And I think that's the part of life that is so curious, and why I actually use the word challenge and pushback. And I want to hold back on that is because I'm tired of saying I disagree because I don't know that I even know what I'm disagreeing about.
Correct.
So like when you say something to me, I'm making all sorts of assumptions the moment that you say something. If someone says, well, I believe that Jesus is the only way. Okay. It used to be that I would go, I disagree with what you're saying, but the truth is I 100% agree. The difference is I come at it from a premise of that Jesus was in the beginning, that John 1 was not a lie, that it's not some sort of just, hey, I'm just going to pull this out of my butt kind of moment for John, but it was a moment of where he realized, oh my goodness, Christ consciousness has been here since the beginning. The very breath of God, when it turned and formed words and said, let there be, was Jesus actually coming into manifestation. And so Jesus is nothing but the representation of that matter that we are all a part of. I can get behind Jesus being the only way when I start to recognize it's bigger than what I thought it was, and it's even bigger than what I just said. So how do I disagree when I've already shot myself in the foot because I can't say big enough. I can't be big enough. I can't talk big enough. I can't have a thought big enough to encapsulate the fullness of any of the stuff that we tend to disagree on. And if I can be in that space and land in humility long enough to allow for people to be where they're at, just to let them be where they're at. That's why this is, I think, the reason why you're talking about having the space for people, for men at night when it gets lonely, because the moment that they can have that space to show up in a place where they can be heard and seen, there's we would all disagree that they should kill themselves. We would all agree, but we don't have to tell them that when there's a place for them to show up, to be seen, to be heard, to be loved, to be cared for.
Mhm.
And meanwhile, we just want to prove so many people in our world wrong and say you're just wrong. And then we got to fight about it. And then we got to create parties around it. And then we got to, and I don't want to play the game of um, government, conspiracy type theories and all that kind of jazz. But that's just the game of power. When we start to really believe that we have power as an individual, all alone by myself, standing in a world. I mean, maybe I do on an island. Maybe I do, but I can't control the storms. I can't control the waves. I can't control, there's just not truth in the fact that I myself have any power outside of what is given to me in community. And the moment that I start to think that I earned it, I've lost sight of the fact that this isn't my power. It is a shared power that we all have been given. And when I can raise other people up into that, then I'm starting to live more closely in alignment with the life of unity that allows for challenge, that allows for pushback, that allows for quote unquote disagreement, because that is, as your quote said earlier, the way in which that we're actually able to stretch ourselves and grow and to move into, you know, the next phase of our life. There are ceilings. I've hit a ceiling in the past 5-10 years, and not knowing how to blend my worlds together. And it's taken me having to just keep hitting my head against that to finally realize, oh, I don't have, there is no ceiling. I created this thing.
Mhm.
My limiting beliefs are the ceiling, not
Correct.
not what God can do, not
Correct.
what he can do. And that's the part that I think right now, in all humility, I where I'm landing these days is, um, I'm going to be okay. You're going to be okay. This whole thing's going to be okay. And while I don't want to see people get hurt along the way,
We have
I
to get
just,
out of our way to help them.
that's it. Yeah. And I just want to be able to receive the gift of what's right here before me and the opportunities that have been given rather than trying to chase something down that isn't mine to chase.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true. Damn. Good points, man. Control, power. I hear these things and like, I actually when you said Jesus is the only way and I don't disagree. I'm like, yeah, but the issue everybody's running into is we didn't start in the same spot.
That's right. We don't even know where we are to start. That's the truth.
Most don't, and even if you
We're
do, you're
just
still
living,
going to need Jesus to roll with you.
dude. Yes. And that's what I've been telling people a lot lately is that, you know, my desire is to help people move from the story that they've told themselves all their life to the heroic story that they want to tell. I want to help bridge that gap.
The
But
hero's
the
journey.
only yeah, it is. But the only way to understand how to get to the place you want to go is to know where you're at. And your favorite word, your favorite number one word that is keeping them from that is denial.
Hmm.
And it is that I refuse to believe. Yes, it's the map. They
Hey,
don't.
this is how I find them.
That's right.
If
And
you're
I
lost and
agree.
you know where you need to go, God gave me a tool that I use to find where your starting place is.
Yes.
This is
Yes.
one of the tools that most people don't have when they have the answers, but not the solution.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's really important. This is probably the reason I disagree with most experts is they'll say this is what your puzzle will look like when it is completed. Here is the picture on the box. And I said, that's awesome. Have they poured their pieces out yet? They're like, well, that's on them. They have to figure that out. I'm like, okay, when they pour their pieces out, a lot of them are going to be upside down. And what strategy should they use to put their puzzle together? I mean, that's part of their journey. They're going to have to figure that out. I'm like, all you did was show them a picture of the answer, but you didn't give them a single step for the solution. And they are just as lost as when they met you. X amount of dollars gone. But now they feel even worse because you told them what it's supposed to be and they don't have that.
Yeah. Well, dude, and think about it from the perspective of what Jesus says about the kingdom of heaven is here and not yet. Okay.
Mhm.
This whole notion of what that really means is when we don't know where we are, we can't even recognize that heaven is right here, right now. When we think that we're stuck in time, we're missing the eternity that is always playing out before us. And this is the struggle that I have because for many moons, man, it was this ethereal dark bookend that we talked about, the end of life dark bookend that states we're going to go somewhere when there's nowhere to go. And I mean, that may sound hopeless to some people, but it's not that. It's can we open our eyes to the reality of the eternal heaven that is right here, right now, or are we going to continue to close our eyes in denial to the hell that we live in?
Yeah.
That's it's a very difficult place to,
But
you
but
got to
even
be
that right
willing to
there,
adapt,
even that right
right?
there, even if you are correct, even if that is right, I would be hard pressed if many people would even know what to do with that,
I understand
even if
totally.
correct.
No,
And
I
this is
totally agree.
where like I lean more into like, okay, what do we know we need to do to get there? What do we know? It's like, well, listen, let's at least start with Jesus's first two rules. Love God with, all the parts of yourself, and, love thy neighbor as you love yourself, or at least treat people the way you want to be treated. Let's keep it simple. He's like, let's go ahead and start with that step. Let's just start there and not overcomplicate this into the grand eternity ether of the darkness of the universe and timeline continuums. And listen, let's just start with like, love God, don't be a dick. Let's just start there. Let's just start there. And what we're going to do is we're going to practice how to raise our awareness of when we're being a dick so we can stop being a dick long enough to have whatever the good thing would be that, God has said this is what is something is coming after. And I'm going to rate it on, were you less of a dick or more of a dick? That's kind of what we're doing here. Let's keep it really simple. So I'm like, well, guys, let's raise our awareness of our behavior. Let's raise our awareness of our choices. Let's raise our awareness of how do we treat other people, and is that how we want to be treated, and then make better choices. And if we just do that long enough, at the end of this, we'll go, I tried to help as many people authentically as I could. I pushed my own limits to be as authentic as I can, as far as I could see. And I did my best to do your will, which is love you and treat people the way I want to be treated. Now, does it get a little more complicated later in the higher steps? Yes. But at least let's start with the basics. And I would be hard pressed. Most don't do that.
Mm.
Can we just start with like what's the next step versus what's at the top of the stairs? And if we look at just one step at a time, then we feel like our progress matters. But if we look in the grand ether of eternity, nothing matters.
Yeah. No, I mean, that that's been my experience in certain things that I've played in where I've sought God and ayahuasca. It's you land in this spot of none of this really matters. And it doesn't mean that it's not, when we say it doesn't matter, it does not eliminate meaning. It is actually the most meaningful place to understand that there's nothing that I can do to screw this thing up. There's nothing. I can I can quote unquote mess up my life as though my life is my life, but it does not disrupt the whatever we want to call it out there and the abyss of whether it's the quantum field or if there are other realities or whatever it is. We can't mess up whatever is happening. We are so small. And I've been living in this world of dualities where the dualities are how I describe things. We are so significantly small, it's unreal, which is an important thing to say. Like, the cells in my body are so small, but they're incredibly significant to my life. And so healthy cells are an important part of how my body operates. The more we can have healthy humans, the more healthy the overall ecosystem of the world operates. When the world is healthier, it is a smaller, significant, small piece of the larger cosmos or universe. Let's start there. Universe, then the cosmos. And it just keeps expanding. And the macro and the micro together are nothing more than the same thing, just in a varying degree of understanding. And when one of those things starts to think it's more important than the other, we have catastrophe, we have chaos, but the exciting part is that there's already something in place for chaos, and that's creation. So we can take that chaos and we can really recreate. So we are living in a symbiotic blend of good and evil, chaos and creation, love and I don't even like to use the word hate there, because
Indifference.
yeah, indifference, yes. And I think when we can recognize that this is what we're made up of, that's where compassion starts to boil into us and allows us to start to see the world not as some sort of information to be processed or to be figured out, but it's just informing us of our unity in the same in the same big expansive thing called God.
Hmm.
Information is there just to reveal God even greater, not to limit. We're not trying to limit and protect God. We're trying to participate in the expansive nature of God.
The only way I see to do it is to challenge. The
Yeah.
further
Oh, I
that
agree.
you go in and the further that you go out, the more likely your answer goes, shit, something made this.
Yeah. And I want to push, not push back. It's not the word's not pushback. I want to push forward on that piece because I think that the idea of challenge doesn't mean that I'm standing in opposition.
Correct.
What it really looks like is it looks like I'm coming alongside the places that I've told not to be going into.
It
I go
depends.
to the
It depends on the
darkness.
mental health of the person, whether they identify challenge as, is it real or does it work, or you're against me.
Yes, but I mean, for example, I worked with the homeless for quite some time, and in our society, it's you don't give money to them. They need to go get a job. You need to go like all the things that we can think of that we think homeless folks need to do to be able to get their life right. But instead, I went in and would have beers with these guys, get to know them. So the challenge was I am not going to go with the status quo that is not changing anything. And I'm going to walk into this homeless camp with a 6 pack of beer, and I'm going to enjoy this moment of getting to know them. The challenge is I don't know if it's more like curiosity. It's like I
Correct.
want to be curious about the situation, not simply just say that's not true. I want to be
Mhm.
curious about what's going on in there. And when I did that, there was healing.
It
It's unbelievable how
it
that
depends. Sometimes people just aren't trained enough to handle even the healing. I'll give you an example. I got two pieces here, and one of them is a sadder story. I wrote this even I wrote this a while ago, but just a reminder, as I call why a weapon. I did a whole training called the most dangerous letter in the alphabet. Why? And why is a challenging word? This is why the FBI negotiators do not use this. They use how, not why, because why makes you go like, why? Well, why you? Like people get defensive. But we train to challenge. Why is a challenge weapon? To seek to understand, to have discernment, and to make difficult choices. We are built to challenge everything, and in challenge comes clarity. In challenge comes peace, freedom, and meaning. Only through conflict do you truly know yourself. And without challenge, we are as lost as the people that we blindly follow. And we have to ask why, but without a sense of defensive inadequacy if I don't know the answer. In fact, not knowing the answer should be the wake up call to go, humble pie. You know what? You have taken it to as far as I know. This means I no longer should be defensive. I should also be curious and inquisitive. I should now be seeking an answer that goes to the part where you have asked me why, and I don't know, and be able to humbly not need to know everything. And, not to lean too far into it being a Socratic method, but ask as if I know nothing, and I will keep asking you questions as if, like, why do you think that is? What do you think the reason that would work like that is? What would you do with it if it did do that? And just keep asking questions until people get to, I honestly don't know any further than that. And I go, now we no longer stand on the port of being the authority. And
yes.
now I should also become a student.
Yes. In fact, I would argue that the greatest gift I've been given was the words "I don't know" when it came to how to talk about faith.
Mhm.
I don't know God. In
Mhm.
fact, to even say the word God is an "I don't know" statement.
Yeah.
I, and when I even try to describe God as "I don't know," that is not true either because there are pieces of Him that I do know because I've been loved, I've experienced care, and so we're constantly living in this state of I don't know the fullness, and yet I've experienced it at every waking moment of my life.
Mhm.
How do you describe that?
Yeah.
How can you put that in a how can you put that in a book?
I
How
don't
can
know.
I know. I don't know either.
I don't know.
I really don't know either. I said I know, but I don't know. I don't. We
Yeah,
could
I
go on.
want to I want to
We have
lean
a
into
podcast. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
I want
It,
to lean into the next part of it. And I don't remember the last name of the girl, but somebody just sent me a video. There was a woman who did a study. It was Nora,
Is that
N-O-R-A.
thing you sent me earlier?
Yeah. And so did you watch that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I did not know the second part.
About well, I will let you. This
No,
is
no, I didn't realize. Yeah, it was Nora Vincent. She did the self-made man thing where she dressed as a man for a number of months and went through all of the things that men did and, reported back her findings, how men are treated, which was very different than the assumption of how women perceive men. And she was like, when I was a guy, I was treated terribly as a man. Like there is no empathy. There is no kindness. It is cruel. What I didn't know is a year and a half after she did that experiment, she killed herself. The letter that she left afterwards apparently was saying the cruelty that women had treated her as a man was too much for her to bear, and she took her own life. She went into a severe depression afterwards. She mentioned it was a combination of identity issues, which is a whole other thing, but it did mention I was treated so cruelly as a man that I could not bear the weight of it. And this is just a regular life for us guys. Like you
Mhm.
have to be strong. You cannot have feelings. You cannot be vulnerable. You cannot do all of these things. And you are treated very, very poorly if you do. And she had only months of this treatment, and it was too much for her. Yet this is men's realities. And again, this comes down to being able to challenge reality. We're not able to do it, which, you mentioned the battle of denial and people going, well, do you see that suicide is crazy high for guys? Well, they should just be stronger. Like, hold on. That's a human being who has lost all will to live because of certain treatment, and the lack of empathy towards that is pretty revealing, where you should maybe challenge your points of view at least a little against reality and not just your denial of it. And it's pretty eye-opening. We see this, and I also this is a sidebar reference, same lines, a little funnier, so this may be a little bit not the best transition. Yesterday I watched, they made a new Power Rangers movie. Back when I was in like 5th grade, the Power Rangers came out. Well, these people who were Power Rangers back then are now over 50. And so now I'm watching 50-year-old plus guys dress up as, the Power Rangers and pretend to fight putties with evil robot Rita. And it's,
I love it.
oh my God. I laughed to tears, like actual, like tears down my face 4 times. My girls would walk in, they're like, what is up with you? And it looks like I'm burying a puppy. I'm crying like crazy, but I was laughing so hard because A, it was wildly nostalgic. And then B, it was horrible. It was terrible acting, terrible writing, terrible choreography, terrible logic, terrible everything. Everything was a mess. And it was hysterically terrible. And I watched the whole thing. I watched
I,
all of it. It would be like they're just running and there's a giant explosion for no reason. And you're like, Power Rangers. And you're like, what the hell? I watched this so hard when I was a kid. It's a mess. Any case, at the end of it, it showed in loving memory of 2 of the Power Rangers that had actually died in real life. One was the girl who played Trini, the Yellow Ranger, the original Yellow Ranger. She was killed in a car accident back like 20 years ago. Didn't know this. The other one was the guy who played Tommy. It was like something like David Frank or something. I don't remember his full name, but I remember like he was actually like doing MMA and he was doing some big things. He was in some other movies. He wasn't a nobody, but he wasn't like as big as he was then, I guess. But I guess he just committed suicide last year, killed himself in a hotel room, and his wife said that he was suffering from depression and was really struggling through a lot of his own mental health stuff. Being that this is May and the mental health aspect of things, especially for just guys in committing suicide, and how easy this is to just bypass and skip over because there's a massive lack of empathy for men these days. The stuff with Nora and the stuff with the guy who played the Green or White Ranger, it's just interesting to see how much impact is there and how lack of community that there is to be able to go, I can really talk to somebody and it matters. It also shows, and I will call out 95% of anyone listening to this who's a therapist or a counselor, book a call, because a lot of you are not doing real work. A lot of you are just you're talking about symptoms but not getting to roots. A lot of them are talking about feelings but not getting into practice. And there are a few out there who are good. There are some, but I've got people in my stuff who have been like, I've been going to therapy for 15 years, and just a few months with you changed my whole life. 15 years with them, I still have no progress.
Yeah. I'm curious, how much of that do you think is actually because of the bureaucracy within therapy?
There
Like it's,
is there is a lot more. I have a woman I talked to yesterday who is in the middle of she's going into a residency for therapy. That's psychology is her major, and she's going into now she's going through the part where she has to do family therapy, and there's another piece that I want to say it's family therapy is where she's at right now, how to deal with internal family issues as a
right.
part of it. And I have her like, I said, reach out to me and share what's going on, because I am seeing a massive gap in actual healing and a lot more in just the band-aid over the bullet wound with no intent to remove a bullet. And that's, I'll medicate you, or we'll talk about your feelings and I'll see you next week. Or like I said, we disregard the actual problem so that we continue talking, almost like job security, by not actually curing you.
Yeah.
And I'll take the debate. I'll have the conversations, because I have taken people, even this week, I have 4 more people who said I no longer need the medication they put me on because we dealt with the root. And
Yeah.
I no longer feel like the reason I needed it, that I need it anymore. And they're like, I feel more clear than I've ever felt. I feel more confident than I've ever felt. And I know that even if it gets tough, there's a place for me to go that I belong, to not feel like I have to face it alone. We're beating everything from anxiety to addiction by tearing the root out and not just dealing with symptoms. And so I do challenge modern day teaching, the modern day school system towards philosophy and psychology and how they're treating people, because it's not working. And this is why I was just on Anxious and Ambitious. She's a psychologist in anxiety, and she's like, I've never heard anybody speaking about it the way you do. I even had another therapist, a guy who said, you should be friends with your anxiety. And I said, the hell you should. You know how you measure your friends? By intention. And this thing's intention is to make you be nothing. It does not want you to do more things. It wants you terrified, paralyzed, not do anything at all. It does not like when you succeed. It does not like when you are courageous. It does not like when you are hopeful. It does not like when you have faith or purpose. It does not like it. What type of friend is that? I said, this is not your friend. You shall treat this hostile and kick it out. And when we start to challenge the belief systems that are being put in there to be able to allow for authenticity, these people say, I do not have to accept something that wants me to be hurt. It's working over and over. Now, this obviously isn't my steps, but I have them step by step by step. Is faith a part of it? Yeah. Is it the only part? No. That we are more complicated than just pray. There's more to it. There are things you actually have to do. And I don't think it's being taught. I think the answers are being, the skeletons in the closet that are stinking up your house. Maybe if you paint, a lovely mural of a meadow. They're like, I don't know how that's going to help. And they paint their mural, but the house still stinks of rotting, skeletons in the closet, the bad stuff. Fix your roof, carpet the front living room, redo the kitchen. Still, the house stinks terribly. This is what the therapy is looking like, is we're not emptying out the closet. We're doing things around the house to say, hey, this may help everybody like your house better. And it seems more like pushing a denial medication versus actually cleaning out the closets, so they no longer need to have a house they can't invite people over because it stinks too bad.
Mm. Yeah. I tend to throw, and I'd be curious about your thoughts around this too, but I tend to think of just anxiety as just another way of the ego to uh, protect, to be the hypochondriac of my life, to present in such a way that it is the fullness of me, when it has a very distinctive role in the passenger seat of my life. It just was never intended to be the pilot. And so my when I tend to talk about anxiety, I don't think of it in terms of a personified other than me. It's an overactive um, ego that has lost its way and now thinks it has to protect me in all cases, in all circumstances. So it'll throw everything.
Mm.
Everything you mentioned about anxiety are the very things that I think of as the ego trying to say, okay, put yourself out there, but don't put it out too far. Like it's this constant back and forth. It's this, and it's a constant tension between, okay, you want to be a little bit of a rebel and you want to challenge that thought, but you also want to be accepted by that community still. Like it's this, it's
Let's
lost
do.
sight of its place,
I'll do it. You want? I'll show you. Here's my thoughts on
Yeah,
this. We're in a map
please.
train, bro. People love map training. All right. So whenever I'm doing this, I have to look into the enemies within part. This is the part that comes in through your feelings through specific gateways. Now, your loss system is a part of you. This is your grieving system. This is there for when things go wrong. This is also part of where your coping mechanisms are also routed inside of this system, but we'll get to that in a different day. So our loss system is there when something goes very wrong. A death in the family, or lost your job, or a breakup, or a divorce, or whatever. Something went terribly wrong, fight with your best friend, whatever. This thing gets kicked on when there's something that is wrong. Something has just gone, the alarm goes off. Oh crap, this is bad. This system kicks on. Most people don't understand that they're in their grieving system for so long. A lot of times it becomes their identity. This is when people become, trauma bonded, or people will have, my identity is around something that happened to me. I'm from an abused whatever, or I suffer from extreme abandonment. That's my identity. I have these issues. When people don't know how to work through this system, it stays on the whole time. If you know how to use it, it does not need to be on the whole time. It is healthy to have it. It is unhealthy to live in it. And this is why people goof up most of the time being able to go through the acceptance phases of denial, depression, anger, and bargaining. Most women are stuck in denial. Most guys are stuck in anger. Anybody can get caught in bargaining and depression. But the enemy within part, fear, is the precursor to anxiety. Anxiety is just fear amplified. Well, this is my creativity and imagination system. Well, this also makes it so I can create dreams, create ideas, create fun, create, beautiful ideas too. But I can also create terror and create possible futures that could go wrong. I can create amazing things. Our brains are amazing. But do I have to have fear all the time? Well, that system is designed to warn me of danger. And so I don't have to be afraid of danger. I have to respect danger. So they go, that's fire. I don't have to be terrified of fire, but I do have to respect fire because it is dangerous. There's an alligator. Well, I don't have to just immediately start soiling myself because there is an alligator, even at the zoo. But if I have to fight an alligator, now there's danger, and I better respect this creature because it is dangerous. There's a different thing from making up a possible future versus dealing with actual danger. Most people end up paralyzed by possibilities far more than when they know what the actual answer is and how to deal with it. And that's the reality I've noticed with most people when it comes to fear. But is fear a part of me? I don't believe that I need that part. I think it's something that comes in from the outside. That is it danger or not danger? I don't need to be afraid.
Sure. Yeah, the way that so like, even like, I don't think the fear is, I think that there are real threats in our world. I don't even want to call them threats. There are things that can damage this matter, this human machine that I'm a part of.
Yes.
And the way that I have understood the ego is that it is a part of me, the ego is, for the purposes of discerning information in a way that allows me to flourish as in this current state.
Let's
The
give me any, and then we'll look, is the fear necessary, or is it a warning or precursor to danger?
So yes, and I think that, but I think that's just it is that if I'm thinking about this in a pilot scenario, the danger uh, is there a plane to my right as I'm banking to the right?
Okay,
I want the ego to be able to go, oh, there's a plane right there. And there's no fear involved. It's an awareness of the situation.
correct.
But the struggle is that if I, the ego, am going, there is a plane there, and so we have to divert to the fullest degree and go. We're not even going to go where we were going to go because there's a plane there, and now
Mhm.
it's overreactive and it's fearful because that plane is always get now every time I make any banking, I'm thinking fear. Oh my goodness, is there a plane over there? Oh, there's a plane. There's got to be a plane over there. There was a plane there one time, and now there's always a plane there.
Mhm. And
And
this is
and
why
that's
the
when it starts to
presence
get,
in the present to challenge to
yeah,
why that fear is go,
that's right.
hold on, maybe. Let's take a look.
That's
Is
right.
there a plane? And you go, all right, if there was, that would be a potential dangerous situation, something I would have to accommodate for. I did look, and there is no plane.
Yes.
In
And
which
that
case, why would I need that fear system to be triggered so highly if there is no danger? You know, the same thing as I when I do this training, I instead of a plane in my blind spot, I say chased by a lion because our body is still going into like not digesting, not reproducing, not in a calm, peaceful state because it thinks it's being chased by a lion, where our brains can have a physical reaction as though we are chased by a lion when you have taxes, an argument with a spouse, something happened to, your kids are doing something you don't like. We can still have these like, there's something terribly wrong and I am high anxiety and freaking out. There's a lion chasing me reaction when there is no lion. And that's how advanced our brains are. Now, being able to have that presence in the present makes you have to go, hold on, is there a lion? And you should stop and go, hmm, there is no lion. Do I need this system that I would have in place for a lion when there is no lion? I don't think I need that. And even still, if there was a lion, now how do I accommodate for a known danger? Instead of having to be scared, I have to be aware of my options now. And this is what I have found with people who have anxiety. Oftentimes, when they know the answer, they have far less anxiety, even if the answer is bad, because now I can go into protocol on what do I do when there's a problem that I know of.
yes.
And that's a very different thing. Fear is outside. Doubt, same thing. I
See, so you just said something that was beautiful, and I think this is the point of even. Well, I'll keep going. I'll come back to it because I want you to finish what you're saying because I think you. We're just gonna figure it all out today, guys. Let's just go with that. Okay, we're just gonna after today. There's not gonna be any more disagreement. We're just gonna remove it. No, I'm totally kidding. No, I love it, dude. So keep going because I have a thought about where you're going, and it's a different approach to the same thing.
Yeah, I feel the same with fear and doubt and excuses and even distractions. I believe these are outside sources. I believe these are outside of us. And they try to implant themselves in us to disguise themselves as we are. If I look at them with personification and I give them a different presence than calling them myself, which is a big part of why people have a hard time with disorders, is they start to act according to what they believe they are when it is not true in most cases. Again, people are looking at symptoms and not actual reality. And so they try and treat a symptom versus treating, is this really who you are? Or is that just something you're going through now? Again, don't get me started. I will take any challenge if anybody wants to have this conversation. But as far as fear, excuses, doubt, distractions, these come in through specific parts in your feeling mechanisms.
To
And
sneeze.
that's okay. And I do believe that if you understand how to have proper gatekeepers, you're able to have an armor or a belief system that can be authentic to make it so I do not have to have reactionary outlets and I can have a response outlet. This would be like having a good bouncer versus having somebody who's like, I've never done this job before. Everybody come in, like I know what to look for with a fake ID, and distractions is definitely a fake ID. And so you start going in there and you start going, I don't know if I need doubt. Well, what does doubt do? Well, people will say, maybe doubt's my motivator. I'll be like, doubt isn't your motivator. Having a hater may be your motivator. Somebody who says you can't do it, watch me. It's not doubt. They may doubt you, but this means you extra believe in yourself, not doubt again. And so I'll go into any of these ones. The excuses is an absence of authenticity. This means it'll have partial truths to it, but it's not fully true, because if you challenge it, I'll have a negative response to it, which means it's not really me, which now again means it's not me, it's something else that's not me. That means it's outside of you again. When these things are outside of us, there is a need to defend. These are not your friends and they are not you. And I don't believe you need them the way that people are trying to convince you, because it makes it like people use PTSD, bipolar disorders. They take these identities and they make them themselves. It is who I am. I am this. But there are people like the guys at 22-0. Those guys have been wiping PTSD off. They don't even call it PTSD. They call it PTS, especially for any first responders and soldiers, because they can rewire it within minutes to days. Gone. It means you are not that. There's just connections to it. If you get to the root, you no longer have to do it. I don't think fear, excuses, doubt, and distractions are who you are. I think they are outside sources that you can create boundaries for. And if you think they are you, well, then they can just run rampant in your belief system.
Yes. Yeah. So as you're describing this is kind of, I'm gonna see if I can switch. What do you see? Wait, hold on. Nope, still not. Nope, nothing's switching over. Why is it not switching over? Let me
I
see.
don't know. Let's panic. Let's freak out.
Oh no, I am. Can you not tell?
I am gonna too. I'll join you.
All right, let's do it.
You ready?
Where is my? Well, now I'm not seeing how to share my screen or anything.
Where is it? Where is it? I can't see anything. Les, I can't see it. I'm freaking out.
Nothing is working for me right now. It's such a pain.
Don't feel terrible. There's something going on right now with our boys that, like, a few weeks ago, something was attacking the women, some energy thing, and all my women were self-sabotaging. In the last few days, all my guys are struggling.
Oh, I believe it. It's just kind of the thing. Can you see what I've got up there right now?
Yeah, it says looks like a perception of separation for God.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've thought through this for several years now, and kind of have recently come back to this around the perception of separation. So many of us are looking at this world that we live in, and here I come at this with this idea that here I am, and here's Rick, and here's all the other people in my life. Okay. And we pray to God. Like there's something that we've got, something outside of us, that God is outside of us. And I believe the perception of separation has created this so that we feel like we have to beseech God to do something on our behalf, in the same way that I have to turn on the TV and have the TV do something for me in that distraction moment. Or I have to, I become a victim in this world because of the fact that things were happening to me all along. Right. I can't take responsibility in this, in this scenario. Rick, for all I know, you and I are in constant disagreement. We're just constantly in disagreement, and when I perceive myself as separate from you, then I lose sight of the reality of what we were talking about earlier about being one with God. I've got another little thing I'll paste here in just a second, which then means that now Pastor Joe over here, if your name is Joe, I'm sorry, I'm not really trying to throw you under the bus. You're not the real pastor.
This is all about you, Pastor Joe, personally.
Right. We're just coming on. We're just coming right at you directly. But Pastor Joe, when he has this perception of God that is outside, then he has to start to create a building that allows him to speak that truth about that God and invite people into that building to be able to continue to talk about God in that way. Well, this is no different than a warrior mentality. In a world that believes it's separate, the warrior has to come out in us, because there is no faith here. There's only faith in this one little box that as long as I show up here and people say what they say, and then if you start to creep in, Rick, if you start to get in there, or I start to get in there with my thoughts, Pastor Joe's anxiety is going to rise. I've been the guy who's created that. And guess what? I'm on the outside of that too. As I may even be inside the building, but I don't think the building is God. And my anxiety starts to rise because I still don't have an understanding that I am actually like this. Let's see if I can get this to do what it's supposed to do here. When this to me is the reality, is that, and I even want to go so far as to say that this isn't even the reality from the perspective of that there's even little circles inside of here. And for whatever reason, I can't get, come on. The little circles are not even necessarily a real thing. There is just this element of I am an image bearer. I literally carry with me the image of God. There is no reason to protect. There is no reason to fight. There is no reason for me to disagree when I can be fully in alignment with the faith that there is something much bigger going on out in like I am participating in something. I'm not standing in the garden, needing to cover my nakedness. And so what do? We all run around covering up our nakedness because we all want to be all the word you said, belonging. You had several words in there that were very much things that were perceptions of separation. And as long as we live in that state, then of course, I always have to be either a peacekeeper or a warrior. Both of those are perceptions of separation. The choosing of my life is that I get to decide if I want to be in fear or in faith. I get to decide if I want to be loving or abdicating. I get to choose if I want to be liberated or in prison. And in all of those cases, this is why Paul could be, whether he had little or much, he was what? At peace. His suffering didn't matter. It didn't have any command over his heart. It allowed for him to actually be free in those moments, to love whether he was in prison or whether he was outside of prison, to trust that God was at work, whether he was in prison or was out there on the streets preaching. He had no fear whatsoever because he had no understanding. I mean, there were times where he did, and I think this was his thorn, but he had this very real understanding that no matter what's happening, for me to live is to your gain. For me to die is to my gain. I mean, I'll take either one. It's better for you if I'm here. It's better for me if I'm gone. I mean, where's the warrior? There is a time, and he can step up to the plate and he can fight a battle for someone in an injustice. Mm-hmm. But it's not the thing that defines whether or not he's in faith or in God or whatever there is. He was the walls of separation were just being torn down. And I think unity resides in this place right here, this place of beginning to see ourselves as an embodiment. We are embodied in God, and therefore we are living out as the incarnate Christ. We are literally bleeding all over everybody, or dripping wet, if you want to go baptism language, whatever you want to talk about. And everywhere we go, we are reinforcing the fullness of God, not the separation of God. Mm-hmm. That's the difference between criticism, in my mind, and creation. What are we wanting to do? Continue to tear down and separate ourselves from one another, or to start to build ourselves up and create something together? And I can't control whether you choose that or not, or somebody else does, but I mean, that to me is where my heart wants to reside, is in that space of there is no separation. And mm-hmm. I am failing miserably at it a lot, and occasionally having glimpses of it that are just so amazing. And I've done this, and here's one quick cheat for anybody who's out there. My favorite question that I've been asking myself for the last 2 weeks, and it's been really powerful. I'm taking my notebook in wherever I go, and I write this one question in the moment that I have something that makes me feel separate. And I ask the question, where are you now, Les? And I simply try to find and place, am I in God or perceiving myself to be separate from the situation, from everyone else? Do I feel like I'm standing outside of the group? Well, why is that? Have I lost sight of, have I lost my faith in the moment to believe that there's something much more at work? Can I be present enough to see what that is and be curious enough to allow myself to open that door to welcome someone else in that I thought was not in alignment with me? Can I welcome people who are different, who think differently, who can inform the situation of the fullness of God, even when it doesn't feel like it belongs? Because that to me is the ability for Jesus to sit and talk to the Samaritan woman. That's the ability for Jesus to go up and ask the man who is a leper, well, why'd you come back? Why didn't you just go with all your other buddies? You know, he's like, well, you touched us when nobody else would, because everybody else told us we were separate because we were sick.
Mhm.
It's like, nah, no. You're not separate because you're sick. You're separate because powerful people have continued to tell a lie about separation, when the truth is there is nothing that can separate you from the love of the fullness of God. Period.
Yeah, I think this is the part where like I do agree with you on a vast majority of it. I would probably just need more clarity on like the separation from like the building and the warrior mentality. Because for me personally, fear is not one of my factors. I do not sit in fear anymore. I do not have anxiety because I know how to beat it. And I don't say this with any pride or ego. I'm like, no, that's just
I hear.
what
I,
is. That is not a, I'm awesome. It's like, challenge this because I will show you how it works. This is competency, not, cockiness. And so the warrior mentality for me is the reason I do not need fear is because I do agree I'm inside of that circle. Well, what am I afraid of? What am I worried about? I mean, what is it? Philippians, 4, I think it's like 6 through 7 or something, where he talks about like, don't worry about anything. Like you're not alone in this. Like God's with you on all the things. Just give it up, put it on God. And that may be a part of where my purpose lies, is I put it on God. But I'm also a trained warrior and I am not afraid of conflict. This does not mean I seek conflict like a reckless person. It just means should conflict arise, I at least have preparation and game plan. It doesn't mean I seek problems. And in fact, I try to, disarm situations as much as possible until someone says, I am actual threat and I do intend to do harm on purpose. And I'm like, well, now I have to unsheath my sword. Not that I want to, but I do know how to use this. And I think that's a difference from the warrior mentality, is I do not believe it's meant to infringe on anybody else's beliefs. It's simply just a concept that I do not need to be afraid. Not only am I not alone in this because I do have faith that I have something stronger with me than just myself, but I have also put the time in to train to protect myself. And this makes me feel unafraid. You can judge, you can
no,
put me down. You can be mean. You can say horrible things. You can say my stuff is stupid. People can name call and blame and shame and do all of the things, and that's okay. They can try and socially embarrass me. They can try and cancel and oust me, which I'm sure at some point they will. But okay.
yeah. And I don't think your warrior mentality is at odds at all. I think the idea of the warrior is that there is something that I have inside of myself. I have a whole slew of ecosystem that is literally there to fight off the things that want to separate me from it. There is a way to say this, and I've said it before, and I'm trying to figure out how to say it. But my immune system is set up to protect it from things that are external forces. And there are people, when someone believes it's separate from me and it wants to come inside of my heart and try to challenge that, there are things that need to be eradicated for the sake of the whole system. And I this is why you have the idea of, Paul and Barnabas in Acts, when they're being torn down by the church, that they just, like, these are the believers that should know, and they're all afraid of him. And so what do? They shake the dust off their feet. Like, they don't even want any kind of remnant of that belief system on them. And I do believe that there is the way you can live a passive life. Not everybody is a warrior. But this is where I love the idea of Hinduism, right? The Hinduism notion of that there is a time and a place where, when injustice is there, that like everything has to be put in the context of, we live in a world of two dark bookends, right? We are born and then we die. Neither one of us know what really happens on the either side of those, but that death is inevitable. And in the story of the Bhagavad Gita, you have this beautiful notion that Krishna helps Arjuna recognize that when you go to battle your uncle who has been harming all sorts of good people, you're not destroying him from the perspective of that he's somehow going to live forever. He's going to die. And he literally, in my words, Krishna basically says, whether he dies now or he dies later doesn't matter. But if he continues to live right now, he will do so much more destructive things to the people who are seeking to live in accordance with peace and good, that it's okay for you to kill him now, because he's going to die. Death now or death later doesn't matter in eternity. And you will be actually saving him from the atrocities that he will do in and of himself when you can eradicate that. And so don't hear this. It's really all about, where am I doing this? Am I doing this from the perception of separateness, which is a place of selfishness? I do this because I am afraid. I kill someone else because of my fears of what could happen if I don't, rather than when I am in alignment with the highest good of all, as God says, everything works to his glory. Everything, good, evil, no matter what it is, it all works to his glory. Well, in the midst of that, we still die. Is that destructive of God? Is he a warrior because of that? Or is he just recognizing that when we get lost in the idea of a self-perception that I am somehow separate, I am at that point more capable of the greatest harm to myself and to others. But when I can eliminate that and I can truly understand myself in the full cosmic sense of I am a part of this whole big macro thing and the micro, there is where I can now live freely. That's why it's meaningless. Like, none of what I do really matters, and yet it's so significant to this moment in this time that I live in, because it is what God has created for me to do. And so I'm not fearful of people who do choose to commit suicide or who don't. It doesn't, like, I'm not fearful of losing folks in those moments. What I am sad about is that they felt so alone and separate, that they didn't recognize that they were a part of the oneness. And in that moment, it's not a threat to God that I need to be worried about. And therefore they are not going to, like, I mean, think about the horrible things that have been said about people who have mental illness and have killed themselves. They just chose hell. They killed themselves and they chose hell. That is a literal belief that is still carried today. And I'm like, no, they just thought they weren't a part of this. They didn't see themselves in that. And so I
Thought they
want
were
people
already in it.
yeah. And I want them to be able to perceive that I want them to be able to remove the perceptions of these walls. And I believe I believe the number one jobs of warriors is to break down the boundaries of our unity. And they can choose to do it differently. They can choose to go out and just protect themselves. But I really don't think that's the majority of what people sign up for in our world when we're talking about that they want to be protectors of people.
Yeah, I think it's different warriors. I think this is the same mentality as alpha. Like, people think alpha means to be aggressive and be mean and be the loudest and be the toughest and the hardest. But real alpha is build. It's the same as warriors. A real warrior is there to make sure that we have safety, we have security, we have peace, we have love, we have nurture, we have a place that we can do this for hope. A real warrior sees when somebody is in distress and doesn't wonder what to do. They go in to help. And this is why the warrior's way is the way that it is. This is not about me being the biggest, toughest alpha, because the reality is I am not the biggest or the toughest in my organization. I am not. And each guy has their own brilliance in their own category. So I'm not even the smartest in all things. I'm just very good at this thing that helps them unlock those potentials. So that's my leadership style, is to lead them out of the darkness so they can find that potential.
Well, that's what you've done for me. I mean, so honestly, that's literally what the greatest gift you've given to me is a reminder that, Les, if you believe in this whole thing called faith, then Rick has shown up in your life in a way that he's trying to give you another perspective of how you can actually now combat all the things that are holding you back. And it's never my war is really never with people. It's all with perceptions. It's all with perceptions all day long. Every time I feel like I'm against someone, what I'm really experiencing in that moment is a perception of separateness. And my ego has been thoroughly trained. I mean, when we go back and I can point at each one of those little dots. I mean, you got media in there that is every single day telling us why we should be afraid. And then you've got products that are sold to us left and right. This is why the most crazy part of what we're dealing with in our world today is information, because the information that when we give the access that we have to people of our information, we're actually empowering them to start to choose for us, to manipulate us, to create that space where we now are codependent on everything that they sell us and tell us that we need. And I'm the first to say, I'm there, man. Like, I watch a lot of TV. I watch TV because I actually like to see the reflection that it in fact, I have, like, every time we're talking, I'm thinking about 4 shows or 6 shows that, oh yeah, I could tell them about that show. And it would, you know, that would explain a little bit, because it is a real situation that we deal with in our world of, um, all of our shows are about separation. They're really, that's why they entertain us. And they make us feel like, oh, somebody understands us. And then we go right back to feeling separate right after that. But that's what you've done for me, man, is you've helped me kind of break through a lot of those, the fear and the excuses. And you've told me that I can be a warrior, even though I'm here to be at peace.
It's an honor, brother. I appreciate you very much for that.
Oh, my pleasure, man. I mean, you're a gift. You've been a gift to not
Yeah.
just me, but so many. So yeah.
Yeah, it's an honor. Thank you for that. I appreciate that very much. Like, that's a big testament too. And coming from you, it's like feel that. Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that felt good. All right. And this is an example too for people who are like, man, vulnerability is like, that's for some pussy shit. I'm like, listen, it just makes each other feel awesome. Like,
Yeah.
we're able to connect and we're able to grow. And that, I appreciate that very much. Coming from you, it's a high honor and it means a lot. So thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah, just a testament to what we're both doing and the growth that we're having together. And part of the journey. And people want to judge the journey, but don't judge each other's journey. This is the path that we have to take. And we're here to help each other, not put each other down. And this is our way.
And this
You and me.
that's full circle too, what you just said, because let's consider the fact that, what would I exchange in my life right now to change where I'm at currently, and what would I lose? And so the idea that somebody right now would want to take away what somebody's going through, that, like, would you want to really, do I really want to potentially not have the kids I have today in my life?
Yeah.
Because any one choice, not marrying Heatherly, my world is completely different.
Hmm.
And it does. And I know that you didn't want to go down that rabbit hole, but it is a rabbit hole for people to recognize as we are discussing this idea of, what are you in avoidance of that you makes you think that you regret? When I regret when I did what blank. I regret time and time again. I had a conversation with a guy, and I may have even talked to you about this before. And the guy was telling me, like, his life was miserable, and he has spent his whole life trying to set his kids up so they never have to go through what he went through. And I looked at him one day, and I mean, many of us did, but I was in his face, and I, not aggressively, but I was a little bit warrior like. And I said, so what you're telling me is you don't want them to have the life you have right now because you want to protect them from all the things that made you who you are, that has the kids today. And I caught up with this guy just recently, at our last Front Row Dads event. And he literally said, Les, that changed the way I did everything. I immediately went, how many ways am I trying to protect my kids to keep them from who they need to become? Because I think I know better.
Right.
I didn't know shit about my way.
Hmm.
And here I am. And he's a hustler, and he is so good at what he does. And
Because of what he went through.
because of what he went through,
Correct.
because he had to take those strides. And it was hard, but you just said it at the very beginning. we are under the idea that in perception that this life is supposed to be simple, that we're not supposed to have suffering and challenge. And yet every single day is made up of two opposing forces, a breath in and a breath out. Every single day I'm reborn. How many times a day? I don't even remember how many breaths we take. It's a lot. But every day we take a breath. Every day we have a new birth multiple times. And every day we die every time we we release that breath. What would it look like if we could live in a world where it was just constantly, every second was like our breath? Whoop, I'm taking this in and now I'm releasing that thing. Oh my
Mhm.
goodness, look, that person just hurt my feelings. I breathe it in, then I breathe it out and I release it. We
With training, I believe that's possible. This is how I'm
agree.
taking people out of anxiety, is understanding which things are which, but
That's
also
right.
being able to find like the different pieces of each scenario. And this is why, like, I don't mind. I'm doing an anxiety training on Wednesday, actually a live training on it. And it's just invite to all, just a free training, you know. I probably
Yeah.
should be charging for it, but it's gonna be a little bit it's just gonna be trying to help people. It's gonna be really what it is. But it doesn't we'll see. It's not gonna reach as many people as it needs to. And maybe we can get it out there in other ways. But like I'm gonna be doing also a live class because I've been helping people as little as 1 to 2 conversations kill anxiety. Like I can't drive, I can't do anything anxiety. And the reason that I'm able to do these things, and the reason that I've been able to help women and men through horrible things, whether it be death or murder or having to kill somebody or being raped or being abandoned or being abused or being whatever. They're like, where is the belief that this is useful? I'm like, some of the most important people that I've met, not even just important to me, but just most impactful, most inspiring people are the ones who have had to go through such horrible hell. And now they go and help other people through it. I met a woman who was she was caught in human trafficking, and she was raped hundreds of times.
Yeah.
And she was at a rape shelter and helping women get through it. Like,
Oh,
do I wish she didn't go through that? Of course. But now she's becoming a hero in a community of women who would have nobody to guide them. This
but
this
wait a
is
second,
tough.
Rick. Wait a second. And this is gonna be at the risk of sounding really insensitive. So for those of you who may be here are about to hear what I'm having to say, I appreciate where you're at, but I want you to hear, wouldn't that be triggering to her to have to listen to those women's stories every time?
Not
Especially,
she had to go through her own journey of closure to be
yes.
able to let go of the things that she had for resentment and anger. Now, it doesn't mean the pain wasn't still there. And it's the same thing with most loss. To get through denial, get through bargaining, get through anger is all there. It's able to be done. But when it comes to grieving, especially through meaning and through honor, for whatever the losses or the trauma or whatever it may be, different things are handled different way depending on the scenario. There is meaning behind what it is to be able to find value. It doesn't mean sadness goes away around certain scenarios, because you can still be sad over a massive loss. But to be able to help other people find hope is a powerful
Yes.
it's a powerful way to be able to say the reason that I'm as good as I am at what I do is not because I read the book. It's because I lived on that block.
Yes. And I think that's the number one beautiful thing about denial, that being able to recognize denial in your own life, there is something on the other side of that. And I know that the reason why I am healing is because I surround myself with other people who are also healing. And when they heal and I see them heal and I can contribute, my story can contribute to their healing. When I can just be one step further along than someone else, they're all of a sudden, they now can take that next step because they know there's a step in front. And and so the reason why I was saying that about the trauma a minute ago is because your triggers are not real. And that's a scary thing for to say in this day and age. Your triggers are ego-based false perceptions of separation. When you can understand that every time you're triggered, there's something there for you to share to the journey of our healing, not just yours, you are now actually implementing the fullness of oneness more and more. You're just that one little glimpse is all it takes. I had a message come to me. It's a scarcity mindset that is coming there, but I had a message come to me last week as I was journaling, and it was beautiful. And it said to me, hey, Les, there's room for your scarcity in abundance. Abundance is not the opposite of scarcity. Abundance welcomes everything. When you can recognize that you are not standing outside of God with shame, you're not standing outside of God with brokenness, you're not standing outside of our oneness when you feel like I don't accept you. You're just participating in oneness in a way that is lonely, and you don't have to. The anxiety comes from the perception that you're going to be left out, that you're not enough, and then some of that times it drives us to the most worst places where we actually do the worst thing that we can think of. And if all we can do is exercise that reality of our own situation in a compassionate way for ourselves first and with others, we can begin to reconnect ourselves to the fullness that we were meant here to experience. And
Mhm.
that's why we have communities. That's why we seek out places to belong, because we want to know that we're not alone. And so don't, if you're not finding that now in the community you're in, find a new community. Find one that does. Find one that is like, okay, oh my goodness, you see it. It may take a little while, but even the quest is worthy. The quest in of itself to find a place to reconnect to oneness, just doing that is good. That's what Furrow Dads has been for me.
Yeah.
That's why I'm looking for this in church right now again, because I want my wife and I to have an experience of community together. But you can't sit by in your house all alone watching TV, drinking your drink, sticking your arms with whatever you're sticking with, whatever the life may be. You can't sit around and say nobody wants me if you're not truly out there pursuing something different.
Well, it's also difficult to find, which is a big reason why I built the Warrior's Way is I couldn't find it myself, so I made it.
Yeah,
It
I
wasn't
agree.
being done correctly. People would do things for selfish intentions. They would take advantage of people, and people were unworthy leaders. They would think because they have a name tag or a title that they should be followed, and I did not agree.
Yeah.
And so that's why I built the Warrior's Way. And so I know that there is a place for us. If there are guys out there who are like they're struggling for a community, I have a place that's not as limited because I know like
Yeah.
there's a waiting list to get in the front row dad. But I mean, like for our guys, there is room. We still
Well,
have room for a lot more guys.
you and I both know there's not really a waiting list. There is a waiting list, but
Oh,
with the right pursuit and if someone really needs the space will be made. And
okay.
honestly, as I've told you, what they're really protecting people from in that, and the reason why they've got this one little boundary here, it's they just want to keep the people out who perceive themselves to be alone, better than, strong, and like they want a place where people are coming in here vulnerable. They don't want someone coming in here to try to get their business bigger because it's a full of I appreciate the authenticity of that. They know who they are, and they know that they want this to be a safe place. And there are some people out there that just don't have those motives. They're in it for themselves. Um and you've come in at a time where like you're completely welcome anytime.
Oh,
And
I didn't know. Even with John, he was like, yeah, you can check out some videos. I'm like, all right, man.
no, we've been talking about that. It's just that it's getting too big for him. And so right now he's leaning on us. And that's literally what he told us at the Furrow Dads retreat was, and this is why I appreciate this kind of leadership. He's like, I don't need to talk to every person. If you're in this group, you're the kind of people we want, and you're inviting other people that are like-minded in this group, then man, they don't need to talk to me. I want them to not even know I exist one day, because I've just created something that is ours, not mine. Where do you find leadership like that? And so what the perception of limitation is really all about making sure that we're not just another country club, but we're a true place of transformation. And the only way to do that is to actually create some sort of parameters around. I don't even know if I would say it's the only way. This is the way they've chosen, and I can appreciate it, because I
Yeah.
don't know if anybody else is doing it well yet like that.
Yeah, I can agree, but I do lead in a different way than that because it seems more like John would be leaning on the system to be efficient, sufficient, and truthful, and the system itself is built on an integrity that holds up even without him,
Yeah.
which
Oh,
sounds awesome. Like it's no disagreement. But I also like for where I'm at without ego, not about me, but I also for my leadership style, I would hate to be able to legitimately do undercover boss and people didn't know me.
me too.
Not because like it's about me, but just because I support so strongly whatever you need and I serve so hard to make sure they know that like they are not alone and this guy has our back for real. And it's not
Yeah.
about me being the biggest or the strongest because I train my men to be stronger because I lock shields with these guys.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
does me no service to be the strongest because I need to get, if he's stronger than me, that means this side is more protected.
Yeah. And I think we're actually right. I think your community is very similar too in that way. And I mean, there's so much generosity in this community and that I've got to benefit from. And yet I am one of the guys who is seen as a leader and I have no ownership stake. I have, I mean, people call me because of where my strengths are. And then there's good dudes that are really solid in business who have sold multi-million dollar companies and now they give of their time to help other guys find ways to be able to build the same thing inside of front row dads with
Mhm.
consistent calls. And John's not even in like all the leadership is like, you know what, we're just going to let things fly because you know if someone comes in here and they've got a passion around something, let's let them build it.
I did.
And
That's exactly what I did with Phil
oh, so
with the
beautiful.
suicide stuff. Like
Yeah.
he didn't have any place at all, and in this world, he was all alone, injured, disability, stuck at home, horrible relationship, no community, and that's what I did with the nighttime group. I was like, listen, you're his superpower is just being a likable guy, and he liked hanging out with people, and it gave him a job to do, and that group has given guys a place to know that like I can just go hang out. I don't run that. I just let it like, okay, go ahead and do what you do. I don't care what you guys talk about. You guys can be as inappropriate as you want,
Love it.
as long as you guys aren't hurting each other and you're
Right.
supporting each other and you've got each other's backs. And these guys have all gone into battle with me. So I know they're battle proficient to if a guy's struggling, they'll go in with them. They won't run away.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this means like it's a healthy place for us to go and clown around, but also we can go into battle if it's needed. And we have had no suicide calls since we've had that. And that was, again, I'm not running that. I just go, let it go. And the same thing is like, you're like, hey, I'm not running that guy running that business thing. Let it go. And if we have a good foundation for the creed, which is, I'm sure Front Row Dads has their own creed.
They do. Yeah.
Yeah. Like we still operate under that. Don't betray. We always have perfect trust. Like look out for each other. We make sure that we put in authenticity, no blame, no shame, no judgment. Put in the effort and do the work. And we all have skin in the game. And so respect each other for that. Like, I don't break that and they don't break that. And that makes it so that together we're stronger.
And we should hack this because I'm gonna look it up right now too. But because I never remember them all, but I do love the gist of it. So I'll see if I can find it. Maybe it's something we talk about next time. But it is
Yeah.
such a beautiful way of approaching it, and it's the whole yes and that there's never it's not a one size fits all. Um, and but the values and the vision are very much in alignment with how can we be expansive, how can we be inclusive, how can we focus on the mission towards for our kids and healthy marriages and our own emotional intelligence and like it's such a beautiful thing. And then my favorite one of all is, hey, by the way, after all of this is said and done, don't forget you're all grown ass men and you can do whatever the fuck you want.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the flair. Like you don't show up with this idea that like you have to conform because the very last thing is, yeah, but you're all grown ass men.
Mm-hmm.
And they mean it. And they really, really, really mean it in the sense that if when you become a part of this community, unless you're going to become belligerent about, it's my way or the highway, and you forget the yes and factor, then you're good. We're going to be okay, and we can live with that. And so we have Christians, we have atheists, we have swingers, we have all the things that that make a lot of people uncomfortable who have found their box to fit
Mhm.
in. And and sure, there's still a loose box because it is about entrepreneurs and business people, but they're trying to figure out how to expand that.
Mhm.
And they're trying to figure out how can we open this up to more and more dads, because it's not about that, but it is about creating a truly a community that's within its integrity, with dudes that are fully aligned with their own integrity. And who can argue with that, man? To me, that is faith. It's trusting that this thing's going to work out if we just stay true to each other's integrity, and not each other's, but I stay true to mine. I welcome yours, even when they seemingly are in conflict, because I'm looking for that place of overlap, that yes and life. And and that's just the way it is. God's living that way. I mean, there's a lot of really messed up people that if I was God, I probably would have gotten rid of a long time ago.
Yeah, I don't know the rules for that one. Yeah.
I don't either. I don't either. I mean, this is because I'm human, because I've lived in the perception of separation for way too long. But
Fair
it has
enough.
been so good. It's been so good. Like, what a great conversation. I've been filled so much today.
One thing that's cool is what people don't ever, I guess maybe they do or don't know, that these conversations are just organic. Like there's no prep to this. This is just, hey, good to see you again. And then we just
That's right.
record. And so these conversations are just how we roll. And it's cool. I hope that, like, both our perceptions and perspectives have helped people. Do you have an ask? Like, all right, here's what I'm working on. And is there an ask? And let's leave that with, like, what do we do, what are we asking for, as far as, for anybody who wants to work with us, what are you looking for? And then we'll just leave it there and see. Let's give them the choice to say, I want to do that with, I want to work with Les, or I want to work with Rick. What's your ask? What's my ask? And then let's get out of here.
What is my ask? Why don't you go first to give me an example of the ask that you're talking about? Because I don't even know where we're going on this.
No worries. Right now, I just created a low ticket offer. It does get into multiple things, but right now, the first thing that I'm doing is a declared war against anxiety, and we are going to be doing live trainings for the first 100 people who get this low ticket offer. So it's $249. This should be thousands and thousands of dollars for the training that I'm going to do, and it's thousands of dollars that people are spending on therapy and medication to try to survive the suffering that they're in, and we're actually making it so that you don't need either. And this is a very low ticket offer. And the first 100 people, I'll be doing live trainings, as many as it takes. I'm anticipating minimum 2 to 4 live Q&As, practice, bring it back, Q&As, and we help people actually go, this is working. What do I need? I need people who are sick and tired of being sick and tired. I need people who are done and they believe that it's possible, because I can drop tons of testimonials globally right now where this is working. And if it's working for them, if you believe it's able to work for you, then you'll do the work without sabotaging. And being able to have the thoughtfulness also to consider other people, not just yourself. Because whenever you see people talk about anxiety, half the hands at least go up in a room, and only 1 out of 4 people even report it. So
Mm.
that means there's a lot more people who don't report it. So there is a cure to this. I am teaching it for a very, very low ticket to give people a seat. So the first 100 people who grab these spots, I'll be doing trainings to teach you step by step the exact solution, not just the answers, on beating anxiety. So that's my ask at the moment.
I love it. I love it. Well, so my ask would be that I am looking to work with folks who are tired of having an inconsistency in their faith. And what I mean by faith is faith in their own abilities, faith in their mission, faith in their thoughts, as they feel like they were born with it, like that deep seated something here is key. And you're inconsistent with how you're living that out in your life, with your family, at work, at play with your friends. And you just feel like you're just constantly in this who am I kind of mindset. Like, I know what I really believe, but I'm really not trusting that I can speak up in that world. I want to work in that space of creating the confidence for you, so that much like the anxiety, but really we sit around and we worry about a lot of things that really just don't matter. And I've had a few years of experience in coming through some really tough stuff to the other side of that, to begin to recognize that while I haven't got it all figured out in my own life, I'm okay with that. and I can live more consistently in the vulnerability of truth that I was put here to love people. I was put here to give them something to really begin to inspire them to actually love themselves and love others in a way that produces something more. And I do that through one-to-one coaching, and I also do that through couples coaching, and I also do that through group coaching that I launch a new group every single month. So come check it out. Come talk to me. Find me at epicfusion.com. I'm sorry, .life. I just threw a .com. I don't have it. I've never had a .com. I don't like .coms. Epicfusion.life.
I have a
EPIC.
.com. I have
So
one of those .coms. What a jerk.
I know. No, I just don't have one. I used to, but not anymore. I refuse to conform. This is all about life for me. But let's help close the gap between the story you're telling yourself today and the hero story that you hope to tell, that you desire to tell, know you're to tell. I'll help you bridge that.
Let's help some more people out of hell.
Right.
I'm gonna do a quick
One
pop
day,
out.
and I'm gonna say it right now. Rick and I are gonna do something one day together. It's coming soon. I don't know what it is, but we've not even talked about it. But I'm just telling them right now, we're gonna do something together because I think it's a beautiful place, and we're doing this. But I would love to have an event.
You want? Yeah, I think that I would like to have a panel, something that we can take some of the people that we trust the most and just do a live huge Q&A for people and just in real time, because I do Q&As all the time in front of, like, I mean, even on our lives, it's minimum like 2 to 6,000 people that are just Q&Aing at any time. And like, I'm very excited to be able to go, like, just throw us in front of people and we'll in real time help you work through some stuff.
Yep. This can change your life, can change your family, can change your company, can change your just all the stuff we're doing, folks, is real. And I know at the core of what we do every single day. And it's not like hey, I'll be honest, this has been a journey, man. I'm on the other end of this, and I think I'm catching some steam and some traction, but it's been hard. I've not done this on the basis of this being something that was just, oh, look how easy this has been. It's been a grind, because it is difficult to really start to believe in yourself enough to be able to take these steps forward. And so I look up to Rick, because he's down that road a little bit on his journey. And it's that's what we're doing. That's what we want to do. What we're doing right here with one another is not something we've orchestrated, as he said. We're just doing life, and we want to invite you in on that. So if we can be of service, we're here.
Like that. I'm going to give a shout out to Dan Jarvis, the guy who owns 22-0. If any of you guys know a first responder or a soldier in need, look up the company 22 as the number and then the word 0. They do help first responders and soldiers, military people with PTSD, to be able to break it. And it's on him. Like, he takes care of soldiers for that. Like, anybody who's got a first responder or a soldier, he's like, he'll foot the bill and help you break the PTSD aspect of it. And they've helped like almost 6,000 people break it so far. So that's like beautiful. Just a props to that guy. No advertisement, no anything. Just like, there's a hope out there for your soldiers. And a lot of our veterans are left high and dry. I have a lot of them for myself. The guys who are like, if I didn't have this community, it's the closest they've ever had since they were served to have a brotherhood. So just another thing out there to help give hope to families who are out there. That's not even us doing it. But there's another guy out there who I know is like his front line, and he's like the last line.
Oh, that's awesome.
Cool. So just putting that out there for another guy. He doesn't even know I did that. So if that helps him, great. Say Rick sent you, and he'll go, this dude, I didn't even know he did that. Any case, it's always an honor, brother. And then I hope you guys share these conversations with people. Even if you want to share our conversation under, can you keep up with this too? Like these two's conversation? Mess with your friends, mess with your people, and then hopefully you guys got at least a few things that you guys can apply in your life, because it's more about transformation than inspiration. And as we say in the Warriors way, this is the way.
I love it.
All right, brother.
All right.